Queensland and Aquiline Design here in Melbourne, and that was a pretty smooth process. So PSP hasn't been a major hurdle for us either. Not that we're focused on that, but I'd say PS3 is difficult and will continue to be for a while. And I guess that's the nature of the business. It really takes you a year to work out what the new machines are capable of, and it's kind of ironic in our business that when the developers get really good at making games on certain platforms, those platforms are basically redundant. It's PS4 or Xbox 720. So it's just the way it works.
Well, within the platforms we are working with, which is some PC casual, Nintendo DS, down to mobile. Mobile is by far the hardest in the Java, and the portion of that is the Java mobile specifically, which ironically is touted as the easiest. But yeah, it's very, very problematic technically.
Why is that?
Because of the OS and then the Java virtual machine, and then all the other proprietary tools that come together into this open kind of platform that are locked in on a mobile phone that's taken to market that really need patching and fixing. You have different vendors come and bring their software together, so it doesn't work together. And yeah, Java as a spec is fine. Java is practically, when it's implemented, is not so fine. Even on mobile.
We haven't done any PS3 development. I'm guessing when we start some of that, probably with some starting next year, that we're going to find that's probably the toughest one at the moment. At the moment, in the last year, the DS has sort of been a tough one for us because we've come from largely a PC background and done some stuff on Xbox 360, PS2. It was a really first step into handheld development, and DS was like stepping back in time to the old days, back in the 90s, working on a 640k DOS box. Really, it was just quite frightening to go. In fact, I found it quite fun to go back to look at some of that sort of stuff. But some of the guys have become very accustomed to those virtual memory models on the PC. Suddenly got back to the DS and just ran into all sorts of problems with that, with the way we designed data. It's kind of a nightmare, actually.
Steve, you mentioned that you try and hold on to the IP, or you do hold on to the IP. You do. Do you gentlemen also hold on to IP?
I have no particular rule about that. I mean, a lot of the games that we've done, like Madden, we never had the IP to start with. So most of the games have just come to us and said, you got a great engine. We hold on to our engine IP. That's what sold the game, right? So that's still ours, and we own an engine that we're using. Yeah, something like Mega Monster. If I invest into a game, I expect to get my investment back many times over. But whether that comes by selling the IP and moving on to another one, or whether it it comes 3 titles down the track by holding on and getting it royalties, building up the brand, just depends on my strategic position at the time. Whether I'm looking for expansion capital now or something, or whether I'm looking for to sort of build and hold sort of strategy. I don't have a last rule.
In our case, about 3 years ago, when we sat down to plan to expand the business, our original intention was to be same as Steve and try and own 100% of the IP, and in theory we sort of did that, but in reality what happened was that Heroes of the Pacific is a good example of that, where we do own the IP, and we came out of that deal with the IP, and the only reason we came out of the deal with the IP was that we were able to fund a lot of the production. Therefore, the risk for the publisher was minimised because we guaranteed them a gold master disc. And how we were able to do that was with completion bonding breathing down our neck, and publisher breathing down on the other side of the neck. But we financed it locally, and in hindsight, it didn't work because that money was very expensive. And it's because the investment community here isn't switched on to game investment, so they want an arm or leg, and we gave it to them, and more. And essentially in that deal, when we washed it up, we sold 800,000 units. it was, from memory, it's $3.4 million production, and we made that back. We paid back the investors with interest. The Grant Samuel merchant bank that handled the deal got a fat fee out of it, and we're getting much more royalty checks now, but we've got a few royalty checks, so it actually broke even and came back to us. And but we worked bloody hard, but we didn't get anywhere near the money we thought we'd make from it, because at the end of the day we gave too much away to the original investors. So what we did is changed our model to be a combination of both. So we do contract for hire work. We've had a really good relationship with Codemasters over the last 3 years. We've done 3 titles with them, and we've got this long-term deal now, output deal with Brian Lara, and that sort of gives you, covers quite a bit of the burn rate on the studio, and then it frees us up to do some original IP as well. So if we've got money coming in from that, we can pour it back into other things. So ours is a bit of a combination of both. So we've got a foot in each camp. Ideally, if we could get investment from people that really understand the business, and there are a lot of people around now. Not here in Australia, but if you look at Comerica Bank or Newbridge Bank or even Bank of Scotland, those sort of people are lending aggressive amounts of money to game developers to produce original IP. And if we could couple that with the incentives offered by the federal government, where we could walk into any publisher in the world and say, hey guys, we've got this project, by the way, we've already spent $500,000 prototyping it, here it is, what do you think? And then say to them, look, it's a $12 million production, but the minimum guarantee we're asking for you is $4 million and we'll cover the aid. By the way, we're not selling the IP. You're in a very strong position to negotiate both retention of IP and royalty return. So, but we learned that the hard way. And in hindsight, once again, I keep harping on this, and is that we need the stimulus from the federal government to put ourselves in that position where we can create more original IP, more proprietary tools and technology. And until we get to that point, we're never going to be a serious industry.
So I guess in light of that, then, why do you so adamantly hang Steve? Why do you so adamantly hang to IP?
That's my bread and butter on the table. Once I've created one for the next 4 or 5 years, or longer in the case of Warlords. The Warlords IP stretched on through about 10 or 12 different sequels. I guess I came from a company where SSG's deals were always done with retention of IP, and I sort of grew up and learned the ropes in that environment, I guess. So for me, I've just seen how it provides stability to a company to own something like that, particularly if you're producing real quality around that IP. And even though we do hold it, we'll typically give away a right of first refusal, and you've got to give the publisher a dog biscuit somewhere, And they'll usually ask for the IP, and you say no, then they'll ask for a right of last refusal. And that's one of the worst things you can possibly give away in a deal, because you cannot. You can take it to anybody else, and they won't negotiate with you because they say, well, they're just going to come in and offer $10 more at the end of the day, and I'm not going to lose it, so I'm not even going to waste my time negotiating with you. So we almost always settle on the right of first refusal, which means that when we come to the sequel, we have to offer it to the publisher first. And usually, in our experience, we've done pretty decent games, and the right of first refusal has almost always been taken up by the publisher who did the first one. So great way to keep those relationships going on.
We've just got time for one more question.
If you do a gold master, what kind of percentage over something like 30%? It's pretty hard to tell the number, but can you expect those big numbers?
Well, on the console side of things, I can talk a little bit about that from my experience, is that if you're an established developer and you're and someone wants to bring a project to you, contract for hire, probably the maximum royalty that you can obtain, in my view, is probably somewhere realistically around about 25% on net receipts. And I use that term net receipts. You've really got to take a very close look at that clause, which stipulates net receipts, because it can be a doozy. So, but it really, if you're very successful, like a BioWare, for example, you could go into Microsoft and negotiate 40%. I'm sure with Quake and titles like that, Activision paid 45% on a product like that. But it really, but on the other end of the scale is that you could walk away with 8% or 12%. It's really a negotiation.